I want to read this next super chat from SZ because it leads us into our next discussion. And she said, any idea if the league will still support Learn to Play for the kids? That alone would be a big loss.
No idea at this point. I mean, they're certainly not going to address that now because they're not even addressing whether the Coyotes are leaving or not. But it does lead us into our discussion. And I've had a few different former Coyotes reach out to me wondering about this same thing. I'll just go ahead and, Sean Burke, Jason Demers, Michael Grabner, Ray Whitney, all wondering like what sort of impact this is going to have on youth hockey. We've seen the USA Hockey stats for a long time now. We've cited them many times on our show. For a long time, Arizona was like top 5 among the states in growth. It's still top 10 in growth. Youth hockey is growing here by leaps and bounds on both the boys and the girls side. We've seen the work that Lindsey Fry is doing. They have their own rink for the Kachinas over in Mesa now. Man, I would hate to see that growth stunted now because the Coyotes are gone. There's not the financial help that you might be getting from the NHL club, but also just the visibility. When kids go to an NHL game, it inspires them to maybe play themselves. If you don't have that example right in front of you, what's going to get you into the sport? Maybe ASU will, maybe the Roadrunners will if they're at Mullet. So maybe there's still a possibility, but I do wonder about the impact on the youth game.
Yeah, it's funny because a couple of things. When you talk about the financial commitment by the NHL, and they do subsidize a lot of these learn to play programs across the league in NHL cities. So I don't know if the financing for that would go away immediately, but I'm not sure what kind of agreements they have with their year-to-year calendar years or whatever. But let's go on. Yeah, a lot of these teams, and I know one of the beneficiaries throughout the years is these youth programs, the high school program. They've all benefited financially from the Coyotes at one time or another. I don't know if they all do now because I'm not as involved as I once was, but I don't think it will affect this fall. I don't think we're talking 24, 25. All of a sudden, the ice tent is going to be empty. I don't believe that. I think this is more of a long-term play. I think that eventually you will see those numbers diminish. I think you will see the interest diminish. I think you will see kids not having a team to root for or look up to. And I think those numbers will start to wane. And that's incredibly unfortunate. And we've talked about, the Craig had it in the rundown and he brought up the names, some of the big name players that have played hockey and go to the ice den in Scottsdale and just look at the wall. And I know the Matty Nyes and Austin Matthews and Josh Doan are few and far between. I understand that. But go look at the wall at the ice den in Scottsdale. There's 50, 60 kids up there that have played on after leaving this area and playing major college hockey, major junior hockey, and having opportunities to play after that. I do get concerned about that, what this does to the youth hockey going forward. And I know when we're going to go out and talk to people at the ice den here shortly and get an opportunity to talk to some of these people, it will have an impact. It absolutely will, because the other thing that we talked about, the reason they do so well here in these programs is because they get retired Coyotes. They get people like Lindsey Fry to move to these communities because they have jobs with the Coyotes. If this team leaves, will players still be retiring here? I don't know. I mean, the weather is great, but that doesn't mean there's no more ties to the community. So I'm not sure if we're going to see that. So maybe the coaching will take an impact too. So I think there are some various things that will happen. It's interesting because I lived in Minnesota when they left, and the difference there is there's such a strong structured hockey program from youth to high school all the way through college that when the Minnesota North Stars left, it didn't impact the youth hockey involvement in that state because it was so entrenched in what that lifestyle was in Minnesota. That's not the case here in Arizona. There's so many other things to do besides play hockey. So I think long term it will have a major effect.
I think just like it took all this time, for hockey to grow, and we're seeing that next generation. And what I keep going back to is what I said on the show toward the end of last week, just those little kids at the ice den last week seeing the Coyotes taking their team photo and saying, oh, it's Josh Doan, it's Liam O'Brien. I think just like it took a long time to create a generation of Coyotes fans, because Arizona is largely a transplant state. So a lot of people who live here, their parents are not from here. So you kind of grow up with your parents' teams. And I feel like that first generation of Coyotes fans who were born and raised Coyotes fans, it's just growing up, and there's generations that are following. So I agree in the sense that I don't think this will happen right away, but just like that took a long time, I think we could see it wane off. If a team does eventually come back here, maybe we can avoid that. PD, you mentioned Minnesota, and obviously for all the other different reasons, about the landscape of Minnesota, but Minnesota came back within 4 years. So you could say that as well. But, just talking about the impact on the youth, and we talked about Austin Matthews, Matthew Nyes. Matthew Nyes was asked about this morning at the Leafs skate, and I thought he had a great quote. He said, "It's pretty unfortunate. The Coyotes did a lot for me growing up, and I loved going to the games. It was a big reason as to why I got into hockey, but that kind of situation is out of my control. I'm hopeful that they can stay there because it meant a lot to me, but I guess we're going to have to wait and see what happens." And, he says it's a huge part of the reason why he played. Austin Matthews has said it as well, and obviously Josh Doan would not be from Arizona if not for his dad being here. So it's just that, again, one of the unfortunate fallouts of this potential situation. Just sucks.
Yeah, it does. It's just like, I don't know what to say about it. It sucks. It sucks. It really does. Because we know what an impact it has when there's an NHL club in a city. And I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around that. We've seen when you think about PDF, what year did you get here?
1997.
Okay, I got here in 93. The ice rinks at that time were Arcadia and Oceanside. That's it. That's it. Now there's the Ice 10. Now there's Chandler with its 2 sheets of ice. There's Gilbert. There's Peoria with its 2 sheets of ice. And we still need more. We've talked about that. I wrote that story. We need way more. But will we in the future? Maybe if you're going into the ice rink building industry or in that business, you might want to think twice now about expanding and building a new arena, because we may not need it in a few years, which is really sad to think about. I hope it doesn't happen, but I can't imagine how it doesn't happen. It's got to have an impact, right?